There's these volatile organic compounds. There's hydrogen sulfide, which smells like rotten eggs and leads to hardness in breathing, irritation of the eyes. And then the benzene itself, which can, like I said, has cancer-causing effects, can lead to burning of the eyes, the nose bleeding, coughing. And these are all of the symptoms that we hear a lot of people reporting on the ground. So it's of great concern.
The reports that we're getting are that that the testing is being done largely under the control of BP, that there apparently is no independent testing being done by government regulators. And yet we're getting reports like this one from George Barish, who's the president of the United Commercial Fishermen's Association in St. Bernard Parish, who said that the fishermen on Chandler Island have found all the birds were walking around like a bunch of zombies. So obviously the bird population is being affected by some of these vapors and odors that are out there. What about the people? Who's independently monitoring?
That's an excellent question. I mean, currently, EPA is monitoring air quality on land because EPA has jurisdiction over regulating the environment once the oil hits land. The question, I mean, so there has been air monitoring done, and to EPA's credit, they've done. I mean, Lisa Jackson's been trying to be a great leader in trying to ensure that a lot of the information is collected. However, when it gets to what's going on in the water, that the EPA has claimed they do not have jurisdiction over that. People who are running the show, it's the Coast Guard and NOAA, and they don't traditionally have expertise in air quality monitoring. And BP has done some of their own air monitoring, provided to EPA, a lot of information being passed around, and the EPA is posting that data. It's a limited set of data, and I think it's very difficult to tell what's going on. And on top of that, where the workers are, there's some on the water, so we need more data, and there's not enough information. But again, like I said before, we know what are the constituents that are in oil, and we're concerned about it. Dispersants are another issue as well. And also, there's workers on land, like on the Chandler Islands, like you mentioned. There's workers on the land cleaning up the oil, and that's where oil is also evaporating. And we're concerned about their inhalation risks on those pieces of property. And there's no air monitoring going on there. So we'll be working with a lot of local groups to request the Department of Labor and OSHA work with EPA and the Coast Guard to do this air monitoring. I mean, with this lack of information, it's very difficult to tell what's going on and what the real risks are. What we do know are that people are reporting lots of health problems, and as this morning we learned, people are going to the hospital. And the emergency has elevated one step up.
The NRDC was giving out respirators?
That's correct. I mean, it's interesting that a nonprofit has to come in and provide respirators when the employer or the government won't do it. But when we went down to Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, we went down and purchased as many respirators as we could. These are fitted respirators. I mean, it's not just any type of respirator you need to wear. Most of these fishermen, many of them have facial hair, and because of that, you need to really have it fitted. There's actually a fitted training in how you do that, and the whole idea is to close off the ability for vapors to get in and to be inhaled. And you can purchase them at your Home Depots, at any. I mean, they're not difficult to get. And it's too bad that BP actually isn't allowing them to wear it, because they do a pretty good job of filtering out the chemicals.
So the government isn't giving out respirators?
The government's not giving out, but it is not really the government's duty to do that. I mean, it is very possible the government could decide that they want to supply them. If the government took over the cleanup, as others have suggested, they could provide that equipment. But the way it's set up right now, BP is the responsible party under the Oil Pollution Act. They are the responsible party, and they're strictly liable. And there's all this discussion about whether the government should step in, whether BP should. I mean, to be honest, it's kind of it's a tough call. I mean, if BP can't fix the problem, many of us wonder, can the government do a better job? And I mean, from a political standpoint, I'm not really sure the administration wants to come in, take over, and then this is their problem they have to solve. So, there are a lot of responsible parties here. What we see is a lack of information and the inability of leadership on the part of the government and this administration to push BP, who is the responsible party, to collect more data on air quality impacts, and also on the dispersants issues that we discussed earlier. The dispersants are an issue of great concern. The science on it is very tricky, because oil is definitely more toxic than the dispersant. Dispersants biodegrade faster than the oil, so the oil will be around longer than dispersants. However, we do know there are some chemicals and dispersants that are of concern. and there's not a lot of information on that. It turns out that Corexit, which is manufactured by a company that actually BP owns, so there's an interesting conflict of interest there. And we've asked repeatedly for release of the ingredients of Corexit that's being used, and it's been claimed that these are industry proprietary information they cannot release. And so I see the issue with the dispersants is actually a very common issue we see with chemicals and the way the chemicals are regulated. EPA regularly approves chemicals such as Corexit as an approved dispersant, where there's been very little testing and very little information made available to the public.
It's also quite astounding that it is banned by Britain, it is not allowed in the North Sea, and BP is British Petroleum. So the headquarters of BP right there in London, they know well that it has been banned there. But I'm amazed that you keep saying BP should be monitoring and just do a better job of monitoring the air and monitoring the effects of these chemicals. Isn't that the role of the U.S. government?
No, I wasn't saying that BP should do it. I'm just saying that, first, they are the responsible party. And that means that, whether they're doing it, whether they're paying for independent monitoring to be done, I think the key for the public to have confidence in what's going on is to have independent monitoring in which people can trust and have confidence in. If the government does it, that's one thing. But from what we know right now of what's going on on the water, what's going on with dispersants, that has all been information provided by BP to the government agencies. And it's very difficult for public to have confidence or full information when it's not an independent source giving the information. And so the call has been on the government to push for BP to either do the monitoring themselves or to push BP to provide independent monitoring.
You've written a letter to the government. What are you calling for?
On Friday, we'll be sending a letter to the Department of Labor, the OSHA as well, and EPA. I'm calling for them to do several things. One is to actually enforce the worker protection standards within the OSHA regulations that require personal protective equipment, which I said before includes gloves, overalls, boots, and in some cases respirators.